The steam locomotive, masterpiece of raw power, supreme creation of the mechanical age. The gliding grace of its motion, the massiveness of its great limbs, joints and knuckles, the relentless rhythm of connecting rods, back and forth, up and down, round and round. There is a lilt to this reciprocating motion and a charm in its incongruous grace. The steam locomotive was one of the great mechanical marvels of the 19th century, and to this day it holds us fascinated. This much-loved machine has fire in its soul. From the union of fire and water and the simple principle of the expansion of steam comes the power to blast 2,000 tons of train into action. The steam locomotive revels in an uninhibited display of its own power. Tons of thrashing steel powered by steam alone. No other invention since the wheel itself so changed the way the world moved. And in the steamy wake of the iron horse, the continents of the world were conquered. South Africa, an arid, sprawling, thinly settled country. This is an ancient, geologically stable land with vast reserves of coal, and because of these, steam traction has survived here beyond its tenure in the modern world. In this, the twilight of steam, South Africa stands as one of the last lonely outposts. A steam locomotive working its heart out, the ever-faithful servant of man, stuff of boyhood memories, a quintessence of railway romance. Like the last bull elephant on the plains, these machines are the symbol of a changing Africa and of the disappearance of a mystique that no one can quite put their finger on. The steam locomotive is one of the few remaining machines where a physical and emotional rapport with man really counts. But they're fast disappearing, and with them, the special breed of person who cares for them. This is the end of a way of life, and the end of a distinct and incomparably romantic period of railway history. We're aboard Class 25 NC number 3439, hurtling through the winter night towards the remote desert town of Daar. Driver Pat Abbott has set the regulator wide open, and the great fire is swallowing coal as fast as the mechanical stoker can feed it in. We're riding part of the main line between Johannesburg and Cape Town, a double-track highway of steel that connects the far-flung towns and lonely villages of the Great Karoo. Roaring along at 90 kilometers an hour, the ear-splitting blast of the exhaust is the exuberant music of power, the sound of 3,000 horsepower pulling 1,200 tons of train. Trailing her fluffy plume across the dawn, 3439 approaches the halfway point in her journey south from Kimberley to Daar. We reach the Orange River just as the first rays of the morning sun begin to thaw the frosty stubble. With the regulator closed, we coast over the bridge, slowing down for the stop at the station just 2 kilometers ahead. Here, at Orange River Station, all steam-hauled trains have to stop for watering and fire cleaning. .3439 and her train of Zimbabwean trucks snake onto the loop, safely out of the way of other mainline traffic. Since leaving Kimberley, 120 kilometers back, 35,000 litres of water have been turned to steam in 3439's massive boiler. Her huge firebox has devoured over 5 tons of coal since the journey began, much of it not properly digested. These clogging masses of clinker block the all-important draft to the fire. They are the product of impurities in South Africa's low-grade coal. Ministering to these engines is a workaday ritual, an inescapable routine, the daily grind of the steam age. We may find these postscripts to the Industrial Revolution picturesque, but for the engine and her crew, some hard work lies ahead. They face an immediate steep climb out of the station, and the next 40 kilometers are also largely uphill. In touch with every heartbeat of the iron beast, the driver coaxes her onwards and upwards. A bright exhaust hangs over the hard-won miles of scrub as Orange River Station recedes into the massive aloofness of the Karoo. The desolation is broken only by the odd sleepy hamlet. Dotted sparsely along the line, tiny isolated station communities huddle close to the tracks. They exist purely to serve the railway. With its vast overland distances, South Africa has always depended upon the kind of long-haul transport that only the railway can provide. Not so long ago, no less than 80 steam trains a day plied this route. On this morning, in July 1985, as 3439 and her crew work an everyday freight to DR, they are unaware that they are already making future history. Within 7 years, steam will be all but gone. But for now, the driver has 1,200 tons in the palm of his hand, and he and his fireman ride the iron horse up yet another long, exacting climb. The perfect shot, however, is not easily had. There is but one perfect moment in time at which to take it.
There must be something more to it. Part of this is the spectacle of it. The steam train is something very much alive. It's elemental. It's fire, steel, water. In photography, one likes to have a unique photograph. There's nothing more satisfying than being at some wonderful place and getting a stupendous photograph, and you're the only person there. But today, with far fewer steam trains, one often gets whole lines up of people all taking the same photograph.
Steam is disappearing, and in the wake of any passing reality come imitations of the original. We love to dress up and reenact history. As real working steam disappears, we lay on nostalgic steam specials. The locomotives chosen for these specials are the creme de la creme. Number 3454, a spruced-up, double-chimneyed Class 25 NC, is fast, powerful, and very glamorous. For this summer evening's outing, she has preened herself to perfection. The desert wastes ring with the honest music of these brawny machines. For steam lovers, when the last steam locomotive has worked its last payload across the Great Karoo, the silence will be complete. The word Karoo in Hottentot means place of dryness. The buffeting winds are hot and gritty. The vegetation is stiff underfoot. In summer, disembodied mountains float dreamily above a burning earth. Distant trains emerge from the haze like ghosts. In the trembling heat, sound wavers unsteadily, and outlines are indeterminate. The locomotives that work this unforgiving route need both strength and stamina. Loads are heavy, gradients are slow but stubborn, distances are long. More than anything, this land is parched. Rain, when it does fall, always seems to fall somewhere else. Yet water is life to steam engines, so what is badly needed in this bone-dry area is the ability to travel long distances without fresh water. Through the silence comes a haunting whine, the signature tune of a strange machine. This is the true ship of the desert, a Class 25 condensing locomotive. Number 3511 is the only surviving member of a class that once numbered 90. Instead of escaping uselessly into the atmosphere, this engine's exhaust steam is recovered and condensed back into water for reuse in the boiler. Her specialized tender is in fact a giant radiator. Exhaust steam from the cylinders is captured and fed into the tender's outer walls, which house the condensing elements. On its way to the tender, the exhaust steam is first harnessed to drive a turbine, which in turn drives 5 massive fans on the roof of the tender. Rotating at up to 1,000 revolutions per minute, these fans suck great volumes of cool air through the coils of the 16 condensing elements that line the tender's sides. The steam is cooled by the airflow, and the condensed water is run off into tanks under the tender. Since the fans are driven by the locomotive's own exhaust steam, their speed is controlled by how hard the engine is working, so they automatically condense steam back into water according to demand. In a conventional locomotive, it is the exhaust steam escaping up the chimney which creates the vital draft that fans the fire. But in a condensing locomotive, this steam cannot escape because it's recovered for recycling. So it's used instead to drive a turbine-powered fan in the smoke box, and this creates the draft for combustion, as well as the characteristic whine. The smokebox fan was one of the weaker points of these engines. Despite strategically placed baffles to trap the char, solid particles were still sucked up from the firebed and through the fan. This bombardment, impinging upon blades spinning at speeds of up to 3,300 revolutions per minute, caused severe pitting and drastically shortened the life of the fan. The water-saving sophistication of these engines thus came at the price of frequent and costly maintenance. The complexities of the condensing apparatus undermined one of the great strengths of the steam locomotive, its inherent simplicity. As the only working example left of a once ubiquitous class, number 3511 is today occasionally let loose and allowed to stalk the plains she used to rule. By 1980, all but 3 condensing locomotives had been converted to free-steaming 25 NCs, the NC suffix standing for non-condenser. It's their refashioned tenders, stripped of the condensing apparatus, which distinguish the converted engines from the regular 25 NCs. The standard 25 NCs were originally built as non-condensers. All told, the three variations of the 25th class have proved to be among South Africa's truly great locomotives. And in their sleek design and effortless power, they held the seed of something greater. An existing 25NC was singled out for further development by a British engineer, David Wardale. He modified her to the point where she qualified for sole membership of a completely new class, Class 26, affectionately known as the Red Devil. Though dimensionally unchanged, she was faster, more powerful, and much more fuel efficient. But she suffered from an unexpected drawback. With her increased power, transmitted through only 8 driving wheels, she proved light-footed and slippery. A heavier locomotive with more driving wheels would have got a much greater grip on the rails. Such a locomotive would have had really impressive pulling power, greater tractive effort. So designed, the Red Devil could have been the most successful steam locomotive ever built. She wasn't at her best, slipping and sliding out of a station, but once let loose on the open road, she was a stunning performer. She came very close to being the right locomotive. But she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the annals of steam progress, she is now nothing more than a tantalizing symbol of what might have been. Perhaps the idea of a successful steam engine was just not relished by a railway management that had already invested heavily in diesels. In the late 80s, they announced that 1991 would see the end of steam on the Kimberley-de-Our line, one of the world's last and most famous steam-worked main lines. There was angry clamour worldwide, in response to which the railways staged a placatory steam festival in the spring of 1989. A parade of different steam classes ousted the diesels and for a full week worked all normal traffic on the Kimberley-de-Our line. Skeptics say that steam specials are monuments to extinction, that preserved engine species no longer viable in their natural habitats are exported to exotic locations like so many animals to a zoo. This short-legged, stubby little 12AR, for example, is not indigenous to this line. And the double-headed combination of engines is also something of a mismatch. Her partner is the elegant 16E, a long-legged, pedigreed racehorse designed to pull crack passenger trains at high speeds. With her 6-foot driving wheels and slick poppet valve gear, she's both fast and smooth riding, the perfect prestige passenger engine. A Class 23 double-headed with a GM-AM Garrett, also a rather awkward marriage of convenience. though the cynic may find this match ridiculous. For a steam lover basking in the soft evening glow of nostalgia, it can as easily be sublime. The essence, the life, the exuberance of real working steam is an elusive entity that resists being dished up on the plate. But there's nothing to beat the real thing, thrashing along the main line with a real driver at the helm and 1,200 tons of real train in tow. Van Villiers is a retired driver now, but he relives the good old days as though they were yesterday.
Dan kom jy nou daar aan en as jy om die brug gaan, dan koor jy die stokke en as die stokke reg is, dan tel jy hom op vir hy bank nou. Dan gaan jy so 90 daar weer en dan vat jy hom, as jy daar voor uit gaan, dan sit so 110, 120. Dan gaat het net soos 'n motorbike. Dit was so lekker vir my, wanneer ek 'n passasiers gewerk het, soos die blou trein en die vinnige treine, en daar teen die bank op, en dan ry jy so lekker, en hy bied so vinnig, laat jou armhare eintlik ry.
Some people love steam engines so much that they've dedicated their lives to working on them. Driver Peter Odell is one of a handful of people who immigrated to South Africa especially to drive steam locomotives. He and his colleagues feel very keenly about the threatened demise of something they live and breathe for. When steam ended in Britain, a number of like-minded people left there to work on steam in South Africa. This abiding love of steam is something which often begins at an early age.
From when I was a very small, it just gave me a thrill I couldn't really get from anything else. I don't know what it was, and then it sort of just got into my blood.
Jeff Hall arrived in South Africa in 1973 and still enjoys every working minute. This is more than just a job, it's a way of life. It's tough and it's dirty, and Jeff wouldn't change it for the world.
I just feel a great power there in that locomotive, and there's such a lot of power in a machine. I mean, it's just a credit to the design and manufacture of those people many years ago that the steam locomotives are still running today. I'm always in awe of steam locomotives. But this line in particular, Kimberley Dar, it's got magic properties, especially running through the Karoo there. You're alone there on that great iron beast. There's nothing quite like it. I can't imagine myself doing any other sort of job. And steam finally goes, if it ever does, I don't know what's going to happen then.
For the crew, working a steam-hauled train is an exercise in keen concentration, hard physical effort, and coordinated teamwork.
Mechanical stoke, you just roll in the coal into the fire and the train goes, but not quite like that. You've got all different jets, and we've got to control it so it gives an even fire on your grates. White and bright, as they say.
Richard Niven has been happily getting his hands dirty as a fireman since he was 23. Along with fellow Britisher John Gilberthorpe, who is his regular driver, Richard drinks in the atmosphere of the steam age. He lives for the smoke and the throb of the engine's exhaust, knowing that he helped to put it there. And riding the tracks through a pristine Karoo dawn is high up on his list of fringe benefits. After hours of bucking and swaying, there's yet more work to do, preparing the engine for the return trip. Steam engines are like babies, really. Their appetite for attention is constant and voracious, and they respond to it noisily. In their personalities, power and helplessness exist endearingly side by side.
I've always loved steam engines right from being a small kid. And always leaning out of the engine, listening to how she's performing. You can see the clouds of smoke and steam rolling behind. It looks terrific. It sounds terrific as well.
To the crew, a steam locomotive is not a passive machine. It sighs, breathes, and responds like a living being.
It is almost human. It eats, it drinks. The quality of the fuel that you put into it, you get the same sort of power out of it, the same as with the person.
To John and his colleagues, the steam locomotive is queen of her domain. A proposal that she abdicate in favour of a lowly diesel is enough to leave anyone utterly speechless.
Ek kan het nie vat nie. Ek kan het nie beleef nie.
And surely neither can anyone who has ever witnessed a steam train in anger. The Karoo, a sea of grand desolation. Slicing through it, lost in the vastness, runs the Kimberley de Aar line, once a great theatre of steam. Signs of humanity here are few. Railway, the odd farmhouse, the occasional road. As a long, hot Saturday draws to a close, the tiny community of Witpoort comes to life in a celebration of just being. On their doorstep, the pickup goods shunts its last load for the weekend.